Hello and welcome back. My name is Nicole Hansen and I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And on this channel, we are learning how to pattern our lives after God's holy order and pattern, as we can see through his temple layout. And today, on this episode, we are going to get into that temple diagram. I've created one for you guys that is not something that doesn't already exist. We've seen the temple diagram many times before, Moses tabernacle layout and all that. I'm just going to give it in a new light and a new perspective that might be a little bit different than what you've seen out there before. So that's what I'm going to go into today. How this came about was I was at a friend's house and she was working on a version of this that began with one of her friends, and she wanted to show it to me. And I looked at it and instantly just thought, oh my goodness, just looking at it just made so much open to my mind. And all of a sudden, all these questions started to come to my mind. And so I took a picture and started building my own. And since then, I have added a lot of things to it, and it kind of goes everywhere with me. And when I study, everything I am studying in the scriptures now kind of comes through this perspective, this temple lens, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And I've added a lot more of the scriptures as I've seen them unfold in this. So real quick, this is the one she did, and I'm not going to show too much of this. She has her own notes on that. The goal is going to be that I'll give a basic layout, and then this is going to be different for everyone because we're all different, and God's going to speak to us all in different ways. And so I'll only share things that are like quite obvious, or we'll just go through the scriptures and kind of talk about them and see, can we see a pattern here? And anyway, so this was hers. She's got it colored and everything, all this writing inside. Mine is just pencil. And there's actually a lot more writing on here, much smaller. I kind of realized this was something that wasn't going to have a finish. This was going to be something that was going to be like ever producing more insight. And so I started kind of carrying it everywhere with me. And when friends and I would have scriptural discussions, I would just keep this. And my husband asked me, he's like, do you take that thing with you everywhere you go? And I was like, well, yeah, it's my moving tabernacle. It's my temple. I'm going to take it with me everywhere I go. And truly the goal is, I think, to become a temple of God. And so I'm in practice of taking my temple with me, going to the temple, taking my temple with me, becoming a temple. In fact, I was reading in Revelations 21, and it talks in there about when the New Jerusalem comes down, and there will not be a temple anymore, because all will be a temple. There will not be a sun, because the sun will be with us, right? That light will be in the midst of that light, and all will be as the temple. And the more I read the book of Revelations, and maybe this will make a lot of sense to people, it's a dark, scary book, right? It's the end of the world, and we kind of want to avoid it. But I think there is a beautiful light within it that we we'll miss if we don't go seeking. And to me, the more I read the whole book of Revelations and everything John writes about in there, I think that is a book about how to become a temple of God. That's just my personal opinion. The more I read that, I just see more and more of that. So I suggest that chapter specifically. There's a specific verse in there that I will want to dive a lot more into later on. So just for fun study and see it through that lens. What we're going to do here today is we're going to start to learn how to see through a temple lens. And as I started this channel, some people have reached out to me, and one person said something to me that I never really thought of, but I kind of agree with, that there are different lenses to view the scriptures in, and really different lenses to view life in. And there's a telestial way to look at the scriptures, there's a terrestrial way to look at the scriptures, and there's a celestial way to look at the scriptures. And then, of course, probably a whole spectrum in between. It's not so defined, but a spectrum of light there. And maybe in a good example of that, I've already talked on this channel about the Noah's Ark, and some people reached out to me and said, oh, well, I never thought of it. I never thought of Noah's Ark like that as a temple. And I'll be honest, up to a couple years ago, I was very ignorant. I think a lot of us have gone through an awakening of some kind. But I think that it's a big testimony to me of the real power of what the Lord is doing, is my own realizing how ignorant I really was. And so I never saw it as that way either. But this last year, as we were reading the Old Testament, I was reading through the story of Noah's Ark, and I thought, 3 levels to this ark. God's measuring this. He is bringing male and female inside, sealing them inside, and then they rise above the chaos. I'm like, well, doesn't this paint a temple? I mean, the temple. And then, so it kind of came to my mind. And then I got thinking, Noah's Ark, where's the other time? Sorry, there's a loud something. There's another time that waiting for that card. Another time that I have seen that word before, ark. Now it's spelled different, but I just started to question, okay, is this in any way connected to Noah's Ark and the Ark of the Covenant? And then I kind of noticed, well, that was also measured, given specific measurements, and I know that one's a temple replica. And so I thought about that for a while, and then somebody told me, yeah, there's only 3 times in the scriptures that God gives measurements, and he only gives measurements when somebody is building a temple. And so Noah's Ark, the Ark of the Covenant, and King Solomon's temple, which, as I went on, I think I actually found one more, back to Revelations 21, I think it's verse 17. We do know of one other really important temple to God, especially in our religion. We know how important our body is, and we treat it like a temple. And so in Corinthians, it says, know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that my spirit dwelleth in you. And in Revelations, I think there is a big implication of measuring a man, the measure of a man, even that of an angel. And it talks about 144 cubits were measured, even after the measure of a man, after the measure of a man, even that of an angel. Well, so then it kind of makes me think, okay, the symbolism of 144, we see that all over Revelations. And then if you read Isaiah, he talks about the angels and the levels of the seraphim, and that has kind of been seen as John is seeing one thing, Isaiah is seeing the same thing, but describing it in different words, and those symbols kind of tie up the seraphim and the the 144 and even that of an angel. And then I think the measure of a man, the measure of the fullness of your creation, when you become a temple of God, would you not have then reached the measure of the fullness of your creation? And so there's some really interesting things there. Why cubits, right? If a cubit is a measurement of an arm length, well, one guy's cubit is going to be different than another guy's cubit versus a woman's cubit. So why would God measure in cubits? I don't know. Maybe somebody could shed more light on this than me that knows more than me, but my ignorant brain is just trying to be plain and simple here. Why would he measure in cubits unless he's trying to teach you something about the temple in relation to yourself? And so just something I want to point out there. We'll get more into that and how I'll tell how that kind of came to be for me. It was a very interesting story. It has to do with some patterns and sequences. So we'll get into the cubit and where else we see that cubit measurement in relation to things throughout creation. So there's that. And let's see. I'm really quick going to show you this. I want to make the temple diagram accessible for everybody. So if you want to go print this off, let me show you. I think I can screen share here. Click on this. Okay. I made a website. I don't know how else to do this. So real quick, I'm going to go over this. Again, I'm not very good with Zoom here, so I hope you all can see this. So it's just patternsandsequences.com. I'm not a good website builder, so it's just something to have there. On here, you can go click on this temple diagram and pull it up there. I put a PDF there. I am hoping that, again, I'm not very good at technology. Let me know if you can't. I'm hoping that you can just go click on this and you can download it and be able to I just want you to be able to use this and take notes as you study the scripture and see if you don't feel like you're becoming more of that temple of God yourself as you start to see the world through this lens. Anyway, so click on that and that will pull up this PDF and you can, and I put some specific things on there. We'll go into that here in a minute. Also on this channel, I'm trying to make some other just things available that people might be interested in. My ward and my stake did a preparation whole thing, second coming preparation, temporal preparation. And I got to participate in that. There were some really awesome things that came about with that. Maybe one day I could share, but for now, we did these 6-month things to help people do their preparations. And so a lot of other stakes and people from other stakes or people who are in charge of their ward's prep plan or need help, they wanted to get these videos to kind of use for their own. I might have to fix this a little bit. I thought it looked a little different on my, oh yeah, this is right. Okay, so if you look here, this is a video of the night we had, and we went over this guy on here, my neighbor, he did all the research for what would be the cheapest things that you would need, and just tried to put it all together in a chart. Now, things have changed. This was a year and a half ago, so things have changed. Some things may no longer be available. Prices may have changed, so it may not be the same. I think he's tried to keep it up to date because so many other stakes and people are asking for it. He's over our stake preparedness now. And so anyway, there's just a lot of information there. The point isn't to get everything, just whatever you feel prompted, learning to hear the Lord through temporal preparations. All things are created spiritual and then temporal, and then temporal, then spiritual. So learning through temporal means to hear the Lord of what you need specifically or what feels right. Just want to make this available. So we did 6 segments. First was the food night. So that's all about food preparation. And then here is a link. You can click on that, and there's a QR code on there you can scan, and we'll have a list of things specifically to get or look into something of the type, not necessarily that product, but just so you can get an idea of what things. This guy is kind of a survivalist, not really, but he really studies things. He works for the government water systems, and he knows everything between here and New Jerusalem, essentially. He used to live there, and he's a wilderness guy, so he's out all the time, and he knows so much and has done so much research on what do you need in your body for this amount of time, to how much vitamin C do you need, how much, just all that stuff. It was a lot of work and a lot went into this, and it's been valuable for a lot of people. So I just wanted to make this available for anybody. You can watch these videos that he put together, and you can click on this and just see if there's anything on there. We tried to condense it to make preparations really easy for people. The next was water. He kind of discusses water systems, how to store water, how to get a lot of it. That was the next one. And then sanitation, vitamins, first aid, that kind of stuff. We had some people come speak on that. And sorry, I got the wrong thing there. Fuel, shelter, that kind of stuff. And then skills, what type of skills would be needed, how he can up your skills. So we just did six months of preparation for our ward. And then he took it to all the other wards in the stake and then helped get them prepared. So if anybody knows anybody who's in charge of that, I just thought, if I'm making a website here, I'll make it available for people. On the spiritual side, the same guy put together all the talks, and this might be interesting to people, all the talks in the last, since 2000, the year 2000, I think, that have discussed more directly, what does he have written here? References to second coming post 2000, post the year 2000. More limited to talks with substantive discussion about actively preparing for the second coming. And so I don't know if a lot of people have noticed, but the amount of references has gone up, and you can kind of, I saw somebody else track it and notice like the amount of times it's discussed is exponentially grown. So this is just, if I tried to put it so you could click on the link, but I don't think the church allows you to do that. So I just wrote what they were, and then you can go Google them on the church website and listen to those talks if you want. For spiritual preparation, in connecting that temporal and spiritual is really like a first stance to hearing the Lord, and it's a fun experience if you really allow it to be a spiritual experience. So put all that on there. The last thing on here is I put some of my music on here that you can just freely download. I think you can download this. If you can't, let me know. But I don't know if it can play. It can play. Download this. Things. I just put it on. And then I had a friend who, she writes music too, and she sent me some of hers. I've only got maybe 5 on. She's got like 20 that she gave me, and the sheet music to go with it. So she recorded MP3s of herself singing it so people can hear what it sounds like. And then if you want to download it, it's just free sheet music for people who, she just wanted to make this available for people. I'll try to put my sheet music on here too if anybody wants. I've had some people ask for a few specific songs, mostly these singing ones, so that they could sing them in different settings. So I'll try to put that on there too, just if anybody's interested. If anybody else has talents that you want to consecrate and just make available, I'm happy to look over that and put that on here too, make some sort of use out of this. And then I'll try to keep my videos updated on here, but I don't know how often I'll be on here, but mostly just the main purpose of this is for the temple diagram. So there's that. One thing before I get into the temple diagram is I want to kind of give a little bit of explanation about how I came to this myself. So, because I'm I was ignorant. I didn't know a thing. And I think it was early 2019, let me get this back here. In early 2019, I came to listen to it. I think it was the Chile temple dedication, President Nelson, and I want to say Anderson. I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's been a while. But the two of them were together, went to the temple dedication, and they were filmed after this temple dedication and asked their thoughts. And President Nelson, I was listening to this while I was doing my hair in the mirror, and I'm just getting ready for the day. And as he's going through talking, now, just so you know which one I'm referring to, this is the video where President Nelson talked about get your vitamins, get your pills, get your health, whatever. That one that he said that like went viral in 2019 and everyone kind of clipped that little piece of it. This is that video, but I was watching the whole interview, which I would recommend to go watch if you can. In that interview, he's talking about coming down and being with these people in this temple dedication and how these people were ready and how prepared they were and just the type of people that they were. And the way he was saying it as I'm sitting there doing my hair, I heard this impression that said these specific words. It said, listen to what he is saying. He is telling you what kind of people to be. He is trying to prepare the people. So those words came very clearly into my mind. And I'm like, okay, for what? And so time goes on. And I kind of thought about it occasionally, like, yeah, what did that mean? Preparing people for what? Those words would keep coming to my mind. Preparing people what? And then in 2019, he gave a talk in women's session to the women about reading. It was called Spiritual Treasures. He said, read D&C 25, read D&C 84, 107, and then study the first vision. And so I went through and started doing that and then got more into it closer to spring, maybe like February or so, beginning of March. And I'm reading D&C 84, and these words in D&C 84 come out to me. And sorry, I don't have my scripture on me right now, but you can go read it for yourself. It says something about Moses trying to prepare people. And I was like, trying to prepare people, like those words, I've heard those words before. Okay, for what? Like President Nelson's trying to prepare people. Moses tried to prepare people for what? And well, go read it. The things he was trying to prepare people for are pretty awesome. So then I was like, whoa, no way. And started paying a little bit more attention. So then somehow my studies as we're getting closer to conference, I somehow turned towards the Kirkland, Ohio temple dedication. All the things I was studying in those sections led me to the Kirkland, Ohio temple dedication. And which was not one of the things I don't know, I'd have to go study it all again. I don't know how I came about that, but I was so ignorant. I didn't know what had happened at the Kirtland, Ohio temple dedication before this. I mean, I think I had heard about this before, but I really didn't know what had happened there. And essentially what had happened was the heavens had opened to the saints, and some people saw fire. Some people saw into heaven. People outside knew there was like shaking and things going on, and inside the temple. And there was just really this visionary heavenly experience that the heavens were opened. That was kind of the main takeaway that I got from that. The heavens were opened. So those words now were playing in my mind. Heavens were opened. And then in spring 2020, President Eyring gave a talk. And he might have given two that year. I can't remember what it was called, but one of them was, he starts it out and he said, he took the challenge President Nelson gave about, this conference would be memorable and unforgettable if we took that opportunity. And then he said, it's definitely been memorable. And I think he was referring to COVID. At that point, COVID had become a big thing and was on its way. And the world was shut. I think by then the temples had already shut down. And he said, it's definitely been memorable, but whether or not it's unforgettable will be up to us. And so when I heard that, I got the feeling that President Nelson was not referring to COVID when he said it'll be memorable and unforgettable, that he was referring to something more grand and more heavenly. And then in Elder Eyring's talk, he proceeds to then discuss the Kirkland, Ohio temple dedication and the things he learned from that. And I was like, I came across that and the heavens were open. And then the next talk that President Nelson gave was titled Opening the Heavens for Help. And I was like, ah. And I could talk for hours on that talk. There's a lot. I could talk for hours on all his talks. There's a lot in that talk about the heavens being open. And that was the one where he asked us to do the worldwide fast. And he had asked us earlier that week on social media to do the fast. So that was kind of the second time he had asked. And he quotes Isaiah, I want to say it's 58 verse 6. I could be wrong. And essentially paraphrasing says something like, is this not the fast I have called for, to loose the bands of wickedness, to let the oppressed go free, to break every band and yoke? Anyway, just click on the footnote for the words yoked and just see where that takes you. And breaking the bands and loosing what we've been yoked under, which Isaiah is referring to like a spiritual bondage. And then just look what happened. I don't know, I'm not going to say anything, but just see if this speaks to your mind. Just see what happened in the next week in the world. COVID had already happened, but then other things started to happen. And right after he quotes Isaiah there, now remember, Isaiah sees our day. He sees this end time. And Christ says in 3rd Nephi, when he comes to the Americas, he says, study Isaiah, because everything that Isaiah said will happen again, essentially. So I'm thinking in my mind, well, Isaiah saw this fast. Is this not the fast? This is a worldwide fast. This is a big deal. These are all Nikki's thoughts. Just go do your own study and see if anything speaks to your mind. But I'm just putting my thoughts out there. These are not thoughts of the church. This is just my own thinking. And so after he quotes Isaiah 58:6, the next thing he quotes is Christ. When the disciples come to Christ saying, why can't we cast out this evil? And he said, well, some things don't go out except by much fasting and prayer. And that's why I say, just kind of look at what, like if anything speaks to you about things that might have happened or transpired in the coming weeks after this worldwide fast, led by a prophet of God who holds the keys to loosing the bands, so that's just a study I recommend. But I actually didn't realize that until I went back and read it later that summer. And that talk, Spiritual Treasures one, just keeps on giving. And anyway, so that's how the Kirkland, Ohio temple thing, at that point, when that all came together, I realized it has always been about the temple. It has always been about the temple. Straight from Noah's Ark, right? All the way to today. And the temples were so focused on constructing. The prophets obviously focused on the temples, getting us to the temples. Joseph Smith was very focused on getting the temples built. Moses and his tabernacle, like it's always been about the temples. And there, why is that the case? And so that's kind of what I want to go into. Essentially, God's trying to build us into his temples, so that we can be millennial and receive the Lord and be with the Lord and live in a place where all is the temple, that like to become Revelations 21. Somebody kind of pointed this out to me, that there are 3 ways to look at scriptures: a telestial lens, a terrestrial lens, and a celestial lens, and then possibly a whole spectrum in between that, right? But we're going to talk first, before we get into learning how to look through a temple lens. We're going to talk about maybe what that would look like. So Noah's Ark, for example, was, as I was reading this, I realized it had these 3 levels. Male and female came inside and were sealed up. And so the celestial way to look at that would be, first of all, do I believe that this is kind of a history lesson? The world flooded, God flooded the world. It was a boat. The guy had faith, he built it, brought the animals on. Do I actually believe that this happened? Do I actually believe that this is a piece of the history of the world? And yeah, I think I do. I believe that. So that's kind of a telestial phase of that beginning faith. And we'll kind of see why faith is that beginning stage through the temple lens. But yeah, I believe that happened. Okay, well, then the next way of looking at this might be the terrestrial lens. Again, a spectrum of views in between this, but a terrestrial one. So like, okay, so I believe that. So then what does that mean? Well, then it surely means that Christ is coming again. And this is a parallel to his coming. It was a baptism of water, and now it's a baptism of fire. And they were getting prepared, and now we get to get prepared. So now this becomes an action. We believe and we trust that this will happen again, that Christ is coming. And so therefore, we put that faith into action and we prepare. And then we get that terrestrial level of looking at this. It's not just yeah, I believe. Now it's an action, it's a motivation type thing. And then there's a celestial lens, which would be like, oh, this is a temple. This is a pattern for a temple. And if I look at this and I look at the symbolism of what's happening here, that might open my mind in ways for my own becoming to be like a temple. What can I learn about this and apply it to myself to be more purified and holy? And then let the Lord dwell more in with me, so that I can go out and help others to dwell more at that level. And in that way, we really do ascend above the chaos, because we are no longer part of this world. We're moving out of this world into a higher order, a more temple pattern order, which is like what President Nelson's been saying. Is his last talk was overcoming the world, and the Ark is showing us how to do that, quite literally. And so then it kind of opens up Pandora's box of, well, this could go so many ways. It could speak so personally to me in my own spiritual journey of becoming a celestial being. So those are kind of the 3 ways. And then, like I said, a whole spectrum in between there. And then, you open the Ark inside, and and who knows what's in there. A lot of enlightenment. And so we go to the temple to be enlightened. So with that, the whole point of this temple diagram, if you want to go, the reason I shared that is if you want to go print that off and kind of walk through it with me, or pull it up. I'm going to pull it up here. I'm just going to walk through it real quick, kind of show you the basics of what I have here. And then hopefully encourage you to take that with you and become that, and have it be your moving tabernacle. And when you think and ponder and pray, and you go to the temple and you have questions, and you come back and you're reading the scriptures, and you kind of have this temple lens to come back to, hopefully to bring more truth to true patterns of God, and that you'll be able to do that for yourself. I'm not gonna, some things on here are very personal, and I'm not going to share with the whole world, but I hope that you guys will discover those things for yourself. But I will share a lot that I think is, that we can see the patterns of in the scriptures to help get things going. And then in the future, we'll add to it. And we can just kind of do this together as we go, as we read through stories of the scriptures through this lens. And can we see this pattern through this person's story? And then does that apply? Do you see that in your own life? The mist of darkness. I had a friend say, wow, this really helps me understand my mist of darkness, like that there is something there is a reason for this. There is a purpose, that it is dark before the dawn, and I can endure well because I can see that bigger perspective, right? President Nelson likes to use the word myopic. So getting us that wider lens, that's what the temple does for us. It gives us a wider lens. So let's apply that a lot more here. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again here. And this temple diagram. So this is something my husband made in his computer program. I wanted to give, like, mine was just a drawing. And like I said, I'm so ignorant, I don't know what I'm doing. But that's how the Lord works. When you're ignorant, you're usually a little bit more humble to learning. So when my husband, I had this drawing, and I kind of mimicked theirs, and it's nice because it's big, so you can draw it however you want. But I've drawn the holy place and the Holy of Holies really big because I wanted to write things in there. But I told my husband, I said, I actually want you, when you make this up, and he's a landscape architect, so he deals with his programs. And so I said, I actually wanted you to make it to scale based off the scriptures and the measurements. So because there's symbolism in that. There's a reason that things are measured a certain way. So I want to be as accurate as possible. And so when he brought it home and it was like this big inside the court, I was like, oh, I didn't, I've been in a replica of this, but when you see it on paper and you want to take notes, it makes things a little different. So anyway, but I'm not positive. We're not sure. And maybe somebody can help again, shed light on this. I think we got it in the right place. We got all the measurements around here based off the writings in the temple. But as far as, let's see, can I grab this? There we go. As far as like where this is actually placed, I think what we came to understand was that if you were to make an X through this square, you would X right over the Ark of the Covenant. And then if you were to make an X through this other square, you would make an X right over the altar of sacrifice. So if somebody knows more about that, please reach out to me. I do want to make this as accurate as possible. We can always adjust it and repost it. But here's some ballistic themes. So let's just walk through this real quick. First off, we're going to show there's a Hebrew chiasm here, okay? One eternal round. So you go out of God's presence and you come back into God's presence, at this time a new creature. And we have a Hebrew chiasm here, right there. And so it goes A, B, C, and then, sorry, B, A. Okay, A, B, C, B, A. And here we have this segment. And so these are my own drawings here. This outer court is the telestial world, is the symbol of the telestial world. That's why the sacrifice happens here. That's why there's death here. And then we move into this. We'll just go over the basics here before I go into my added notes. You have the holy place, and then you have the Holy of Holies, and then the mercy seat is within the Holy Holies. and then we know who sits on the mercy seat. So that is the basics of the tabernacle. Sorry, I'm trying to learn how to use this at the same time. So you enter at the gate, right? That's symbolic of baptism. And I think I forgot to write that here. Yes, I did. I apologize. Maybe I can fix that and put it back on. So baptism, you enter at the gate, a straight and narrow path. And then we come to the altar of sacrifice, which is atonement. And then we have the laver of water, which is similar to our initiatory now. And then, sorry, again, I'm trying to figure out how to use this. There we go. And then the holy places is similar to our endowment. You have the altar and incense, a prayer altar, and then moving through the veil into the Holy of Holies, the mercy seat. So I think, and then you have the table of showbread. There were two sets of 6 loaves of showbread, symbolic of the 12 tribes of Israel. Here you have the lampstand, which was like the menorah, light the way. And then, yeah, we did the incense. Okay. I think that's kind of the basics of, so the outer court, everything on the outer court was symbolic of celestial sphere. And then you move inward, and this would be like the terrestrial sphere. And then you move into the Holy of Holies, which would be symbolic of the celestial. And so the way I have this drawn, I'm drawing this veil going all the way through the diagram here, mostly for your own writing, so you can segment, okay, celestial, so you can see it clearly, celestial, terrestrial, telestial. But just know that this whole court is actually the telestial. And I assume I can see there is something to be had here about this. Why does it get smaller, right? And kind of a creationary effect there that we'll talk about in another video. But okay. So now we got that. We have the one eternal realm going out of his presence, coming back in, leaving the celestial sphere of creation and coming back into it as a new creature. So I have this veil drawn in between each telestial, terrestrial, celestial, each realm, essentially. And each veil is a death and a rebirth. So shedding off the old, being reborn into the new. So just some food for thought there. Let's see. Okay. So then we have creation. So if we look at this segment here as the celestial, we have creation, fall, atonement, and then up justification, sanctification, exaltation. So going out, coming back in. And with that, we also have that's the premortal state. And then we kind of have the Garden of Eden, which in our spiritual journey is symbolic of, in fact, I feel like there's more I'm learning about this. Maybe I'll get a chance to talk about that. But symbolic of childhood innocence in our own spiritual journey. And then, so that was the fall, and then we're in need of atonement, which would then be symbolic of adulthood in our spiritual journey of being culpable, which is where we're held accountable for the things that happen. We're now adults. In childhood, everything was innocence. Mistakes are washed clean. As an adult, we know better. Things are we're to learn. So that's symbolic of really childhood, but also the spiritual child and the spiritual adult. We can be an adult, but still be a spiritual child, still be very innocent to things. And I think for, when you've had a rude awakening, then you might experience what that feels like to now be a spiritual adult. It's a rebirth spiritually, essentially. And that's where we need atonement and justification at that point, to then bring us sanctification and to our exaltation. So, which will then eventually lead us into the millennium or the spirit world, and then into immortality and the post-mortal glory of celestialism. There is the measurements here west, or the directions west, south, east, and north. So going out, coming back in. I don't know. I mean, for me, this helps make sense when I'm reading things about the journeys the Israelites took, or the modern pioneers, and New Jerusalem and Old Jerusalem, and questions I have about direction. why are there different directions and things, going east and coming back west? And so some things to think about there. North and south, we know there's stuff about those who are taking north, the north countries. And anyway, so hopefully through this lens that can shed some more light on some people. So like I talked about in my first video, what I realized was that all the scriptures fit in this pattern. You could read the scriptures and see, oh yes, here's this pattern. Here it is again, it's right here. And start to look at the stories through this lens. So now we have, we're all individual, and we all have different journeys, and we all have different stories, but the patterns will be similar, kind of like in creation, how, a flower follows a perfected pattern, but you get a different, this flower looks different than this flower, but they're all following a perfect creationary pattern, right? So it's still individual, but then unison at the same time, if that makes sense. And we'll get into that in another video. That's more of a mathematical thing for anybody who's interested in that. So these are just the basics. I have quite a bit written, that maybe we can go. Oh, the facsimiles also, 321 again. Oh, I'm just realizing, do I have the right one here? Oh yes, I do. Okay, we just haven't got more deep into it. So the pattern of 3 is like all over the scriptures, right? So you can really start diving into it when you kind of just map it out as 3. And so we know that in the celestial is God's presence, the terrestrial is Christ's presence, and the telestial is the Holy Ghost. And here is another 3. We have Abraham, where God makes his promises. And then we have Isaac, where you are learning, God provides. So thinking about your own spiritual journey in this way, God provides. And then Israel, God prevails. And here we have faith, hope, and charity. And then we have Moses, Elijah, and Christ. And something that I questioned for a while is like, okay, we have Christ here, but we have Christ here. And then we have baptism of water and baptism of fire for the gift of the Holy Ghost. It seemed like there were 2. And so I'm curious about that for a long time. I felt like, oh, and this doesn't make any sense. But I actually feel like I found my answer in D&C 88. So I might do a whole thing on that one. But if you're having that question like me, you can go research that now. So Elijah, Christ. We also have the laver of water was made of bronze. Lampstand was made of silver, and the Ark of the Covenant was made of gold. So bronze, silver, and gold. And what else am I missing here? Telestial, terrestrial, celestial. I think I've gone over everything. I'm not going to analyze this for you guys today. I'm just showing you, letting you go print it off. Okay, so the doctrine of Christ specifically. That's where I discovered, wait, all these stories fit in this pattern. And President Nelson's put some emphasis on understanding the doctrine of Christ. And I used to think the doctrine meant scriptures. But as I've gone into this, I've realized, no, all the scriptures, they're the doctrine because they fit the pattern. They fit. The doctrine of Christ would be the way back. That's Christ's role. He is the way back. So we go out of the presence, the fall, and then we are held in the fall, and then he is the way back. He is the light and the way. And so this then becomes the doctrine of Christ. And so 2 Nephi 31 through 33 is a good read to really get a grasp on the doctrine of Christ. It's all about the temple. And him showing us the way through there. So when Christ died on the cross, up until Christ died on the cross, the ancient ways were to come to the altar and bring a lamb, and this was as far as they could go. This was as far as the 12 tribes of Israel were camped around on the outside, and they would come in, and this was as far as they could go. They couldn't go any further. And so only the high priest could go in through here, who was a symbol of Christ. And when Christ died on the cross at 3 p.m., the veil was rent open, which symbolized to me a couple things. It symbolized a broken heart of God, which I think tells us something. I'll talk about that another time. But it also symbolizes that now all could enter, because the sacrifice of the lamb had finally taken place. Now all could enter through on the way back, and Christ is that way back. And so this is why temples are so important to us. In other beliefs, it's other Christians, you don't need it because Christ did it for us. But we more believe, no, he is the way. He's showing us the way. He opened the way so that we could then go through and continue on. And so it's just kind of the same thing, but a little bit different perspective that changes everything. It makes a change to everything. So, so then we get that straight and narrow path. And so, why did I bring that up? Anyway, go read 2 Nephi, the Doctrine of Christ, study that. I'm starting to see there's an interesting nature between the Father and the Son, and Christ really being the center of all this, and this reflection of that is taking place between the difference of the lowest and the highest, and that Christ really is. He ascended from on high and down below, and that he really is the epicenter of it all, and to uniting us back to wholeness with the Father. So it's always been about the temple. It hasn't changed. When the saints got sent west, right? We read in the beginning of Doctrine and Covenants, the whole church got put under condemnation, and they got sent west. From my understanding, so after I studied the Kirkland, Ohio temple dedication, my understanding was that the Nabu temple, there was a promise that they would get to see the Lord if, again, very similar to the promise made to Moses's people, that Moses was trying to get the people to be prepared for in D&C 84, that if the people were ready, that, and if they finish the temple on time, correct me if I'm wrong. Again, this is how I remember the story. I have kids. I can't go back and restudy, so I retain a lot, but I can get off sometimes. So please correct me if I'm wrong. But my understanding is that they had to have the temple finished in order to receive those promised blessings, and that the outside of the temple was finished, but the inside was not. And to me, the reason I guess maybe I remember that is because I remember how it felt when I read it was, oh, the inner vessel wasn't finished. And how many times that Christ talks about the inner vessel in the scriptures. The heart was not finished. The heart was not purified. So, if you watch my last video, the heart, getting the heart and mind connected, activating the heart really stems this creationary existence, where we not only go to the temple, we begin to become the temple, and then creation then flows from that. We ourselves are learning to become a Garden of Eden, where everything we do is patterned in this way, which is infinite. It could be taken wrong as like, well, everything follows the same pattern. We'll get into more of like, well, that pattern is also eternal and creates infinite amount of creations. So, and how is that even possible? We'll kind of talk a little bit about like all that. And anyway, so I just kind of have this, as I study, Revelations and Isaiah and the doctrine of Christ. Wade Nephi talks about it, and he delighted in the words of Isaiah. And for the longest time, I'm like, Isaiah is so dark and scary. Why on earth is this guy delighting in the words of Isaiah? What am I missing? And it stems a question. Okay, I must be missing something. Okay, we have one other thing here. I forgot to mention Alpha and Omega on those circles there. So I really want to go into one of these before we finish here, to kind of give you an example of, well, what does it look like that the scriptures would fit into this pattern. So we'll just do one quick walkthrough. We'll use Moses. That's the most obvious one. He had the people put this is where the atonement comes from, or the Passover, right? The lamb's blood over the doors. So we get the atonement and Passover there. Then they were delivered through the ocean, through the sea, the Red Sea. And so we get water here. And then they were given, we get the lampstand here, they were given fire. Then they moved into the wilderness. Okay. And they moved into the wilderness. Now see if that doesn't open your mind a little bit more. Then they moved into the wilderness. Okay. And what does this symbolize for us? So during their wilderness, the Lord lit their way, and he provided manna for them. And then Moses went up to to offer prayers on behalf of the people. And what he was trying to do was get people into the presence of the Lord up Mount Sinai. And some did not. And so I'm seeing these parallels then between, okay, Moses tried to do this, Joseph Smith tried to do this, the inner vessel, the heart, and now our prophet's trying to do this. Yeah, I want to be a part of that. And we're told that in the end, this is the time that all the prophets have longed to see. All the prophets have longed to see this happen. So I think we get to be a part of that great thing. So a couple other I'll run through here real quick. I'll just paint a quick image. Esther was trying to get her people into the presence. Well, no, it's a story about her coming into the presence of the Lord, and kind of the sacrifice she needed to make for herself on behalf of the people. and then the brother of Jared and his coming into the presence of the Lord and the things that he was doing up to that point prior to that, and Nephi coming into the promised land, Aaron leading the people into leading the people into the promised land, and just over and over again, Noah's Ark leading them into the promised land. We know the promised land is symbolic of the spear, and then you get the iron rod, right? And that one is, to me, was one of the most fascinating in studying this, was really reading that story about the guy's dream and the iron rod, between what he sees and Nephi sees, and when they entered the gate, and then what happened. There's this series of things, and it was not until the people grabbed the rod that they were then bombarded by the mist of darkness. But they had entered the gate before that, and so I'm still learning from there. But there is a wilderness and a darkness that the Lord then protects us from, and that we see patterned over and over in the scriptures. And so, if you feel like you're in a dark wilderness, well, you're right on your way. You're going right the way you're supposed to be going. So keep it up, endure in hope and faith, right? Because we know where it's leading to us. And so, the tree of life, what did it symbolize? Where would you put that? We can see these stories and these patterns all over. And then the more we see it, then the more we can apply it and get better answers from the Lord for ourselves. This is where I think you're telling me I'm at. Is this right? Is this correct? Go to the temple, listen, pay attention. Oh, is there something that stands out to you that maybe didn't before? Come back, study. Yeah. Oh, and then watch the pattern as you become a temple. Watch the pattern and the sequences unfold literally around you in your life, and they will. If you become aware. Eventually we'll go into the rainbow, the token of the covenant, and that was given to Noah, but it was also given to Enoch. And that fits here. You can think of this in that way. The consciousness of spirituality and becoming a more conscious. God is all consciousness. What was the symbol of the brother of Jared that he was asking from the Lord? Think about that. So the next video, I just want to get your guys' mind thinking. Like I said, I'm not going to do all that for you. A lot of it will be sacred experience for you. And if you feel inclined, important to share, I would love to hear about it. Otherwise, this is for you and the Lord to work out together. And then go and think about the blessings. Go to really listen to the words when you go to the temple. It is a place of enlightenment. And think about what you are being prepared for, what you're being taught at these different stages, and how does it relate to the next stage. See if there's anything on mine that I want to. Yeah, well, some of this stuff from mine we'll get into a little bit more. It goes more into specific stories, things that are happening in our world. Do they fit in this? And anyway, so the next one we'll do, the one that I really want to get into. We went into the manifestation between heart and mind, and that spiritual to physical, and how that's connected. Now we have the temple diagram. Now, how can we merge those two together? The heart, the broken heart, the contrite spirit, a death and a rebirth, and shedding off the old, becoming the new, but then a whole spectrum in between. And this is where we, in D&C 88, kind of an answer that I found we can talk more about later. We move from a portion of the kingdom into a fullness. And so Elder Bednar gave a really good talks at some point about um, the Holy Ghost and the need to still continue on to receive the Holy Ghost. And I'm sure somebody can clue me into where that talk was. I haven't been able to find it. I read it once or twice a long time ago, but it kind of awakened me to, oh, I thought I already had it, and then I'm looking at this. Well, I do, don't I? but realizing, oh, there's a portion and then a fullness of something. And President Nelson was the first, I think, to really wake up the members that it was in that same video that the Chile dedication one. He said, if you think that the gospel has been fully restored, no, we're just in the exponential phase. Man, did I learn a lot when he said exponential. My math mind went crazy. We'll talk a lot about what happens during an exponential change. And so he's like, we're just at the expo. Dude, that means then that if we're at an exponential phase, things are about to change more rapidly than they've ever had before until we're in essentially a straight up, straight back to heaven type direction. And before that, I think most of us in our ignorance always thought that the restoration was an event that happened. Sorry, it's my mic. Was an event that happened, a one-time thing. It was restored. It's done. And we know that's not true because we know that there's more scripture to be had in the future and that more will be revealed. We have the articles of faith that tell us that. And but it took him, I don't know if other people felt this way. I think a lot of people did. It took him saying it that made us all say, what? It's not fully been revealed. It's not fully been restored. So this restoration of all things is just starting to really take off. You know, we've been in this slow trickle since the event of the first vision, and now we're in the times of exponential change and growth and rebirth. And anyway, so I think I'll end there. I really could talk on this for hours. We'll try to contain it a little more topic by topic, not to overwhelm. Print this off. I just go there, print it off. It should be able to print off for free. It's just there. If you can't, let me know. And the next thing I want to do is combine. Okay, now we have this heart and mind science that I went through in the last video. If you did not see that, you will want to go watch that because I'm going to use that a lot in coming videos. That concept, I mean, that is the temple, our will, that is God prevails, right? That is our will becoming God's when our heart is contrite and our spirit, our heart is broken, our spirit contrite. It opens, it rends the veil. You know, the Nauvoo temple was not, the inner vessel was not finished. It's the heart. The people's heart have never been ready. And all the generations, except maybe Enoch that was taken up, right? The other Zions that were created, or anybody who has been a translated being from that, John and the three Nephites and the others that we know of, and anybody who we don't know of, that the heart, Zion is where the heart is, and or the pure in heart are is where the pure in heart are. We know that. So that's going to be a huge part of becoming a temple. Is this, to me, this is God's heart. This is like when I carry this around, like this is his heart. It is his son. It is what was broken of him. It was his broken spirit. It was his broken sacrifice. And it rent the veil for everybody to come through. It allowed God to be God in a sense of unveiling all, to be able to come through to bring his children back. It was his condescension So we will apply that that concept to the temple a lot. We're going to start with the spirit of revelation, which is the heart and mind. So in preparation for, I think that'll be my next video. Don't quote me on that, but I want to get into that soon. To prep for that, study Doctrine and Covenants 8 and a little bit about Moses' story, and just kind of ponder that a little bit if you want to be ready for the next one. Otherwise, I'll just go into it. But that was a lot. Thank you for staying with me. I don't really know what I'm going to say when I get into this, so I tend to blabber a little bit, and I just feel like the Lord told me, don't try to perfect this. If you do, it'll never happen. Just get the information out there and let people expand on it. That, like, the Spirit will do the rest. So, like I said, a lot of this is very basic, but just those basics hopefully will give more insights than maybe they have in the past. And I would love anybody's thoughts who can share more, that know more in this direction, that would be able to help me help you. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.